Welcome to the Atheist Podcast. This is our recap episode from our interview with Betty and Kyle Mertens, the authors of Unraveled: When Loss Changes Everything. So if you have not yet listened to the interview with Betty and Kyle, definitely go back and listen to that. And then join us here as we debrief our learnings from Betty and Kyle. Welcome to the Atheist Podcast. I'm Erin.
And I'm Kelley. Atheist is where we will explore American cultural trends through the lenses of a devout theist
And a devout atheist. We will discuss the messiness of being human.
the latest in social science, psychology, and American culture.
And what any of it has to do with Homo sapiens' longtime preoccupation with religion. Okay.
Oh, man.
So they just, they're so
Amazing.
awesome. So awesome.
They're amazing.
I just, every time I interact with them, I feel just in awe.
Yes.
And that is,
That's the first,
I know.
right?
I know. The first way that we experience awe is to see the strength and resilience and courage in other people. And they are
100%.
yeah.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Yeah.
That was definitely my biggest takeaway from that conversation was how resilient, how strong, and also just how wise they are.
Yeah.
And how wise they had to be at such a young age.
Yeah. I mean, and the wisdom really does, it comes out in the book. I mean, you know, as you're reading it, there are so many things. We were kind of chatting with them after we were off mic, and I was saying that one of the things that I took away from it was there are things that they articulate that are the things that are just, they're right in front of your face, and sometimes you don't see it until a certain thing happens, and then all of a sudden this thing that was there all along you can see differently, and that's one of the gifts that I think Betty and Kyle give to the people that they interact with and who read their books. And
I there was something we had talked a little bit about this prior to the interview, and then Betty said it when she was talking. She just spoke about this part, that this idea that of this feeling of just absolute helplessness, and that they had no control over what was happening.
Yeah.
And we had been talking previously about in our lead up episode about the idea of, what is suffering and how do we transform suffering, and I one of the things that Roar says is that suffering is anytime we are not in control, right? So obviously her pointing to that out so specifically, like that was one of the things that caused the suffering, like there was nothing I could do.
Yeah.
But yet in that same way, we as humans need to feel a sense of control and security in our lives. So when that's taken away, that causes suffering. But so many of us equate that loss of control with, like, I'm at a stoplight and I have to get somewhere. Or, like my kid is doing something, or, I don't have any control over, what the DoorDash person picks out at the grocery store. I don't know. Like we can we can micro suffer, and I'm not saying that people don't suffer for small reasons, but there's these micro sufferings that we just like
hashtag micro sufferings. That's like it's gonna be all the rage.
It's gonna be all the rage. But I mean, I'm serious. Like anybody listening to that interview and then And I'm not saying that you don't have the
It's not
right.
about comparison,
I know it's
but
not about
I
comparison.
but at the same time, there is something powerful about having some context
Yes.
and you know, recognizing. I think recognizing,
Yeah.
maybe this is it. It's not about comparing. It's just about recognizing that if someone is able to move through what they were able to move
Mhm.
through in such a beautiful
Yes.
way, um you know, you could move
I
through the
can
micro
also
sufferings.
I can also breathe deeply and
Yeah.
get past my frustration at the red stoplight.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
please, God.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and the roar, that suffering is when you are not in control.
Mhm.
I was listening to an interview. I can't remember which kind of MD this person was, but
Mhm.
they were talking about. She just used this simple phrase, and it was just that change equals stress.
Yeah.
And I was like, man, that's such a great way to put it. And
Yep.
it's so true. I mean, and we feel that in the small ways and in
Mhm.
these really big ways, which is like not only is this just change that is stressful, but like I'm switching jobs or I'm moving to a new city
Mhm.
or, you know, those are all things, you know, that like when you first go to
Yeah.
college. I mean, there's just so many different like things that change in your life that are stressful
Yeah.
on a
Eustress or
yeah,
distress,
yeah.
right?
But then there are those things that change that are like, this will change everything
Everything.
forever.
Yeah.
And you feel it in a really visceral way
Mhm.
that is stressful.
Yeah.
Um, but I don't know. There's so many things that, and this is why writing a book is so powerful, is because you're putting language to things that people experience and they feel, and sometimes just being able to say what it is really
Mhm.
helpful.
I mean, the fact that they had the the state of mind to do that journal and
I
to
know.
write down those things, to bond them in that moment and in that time, and to communicate, and that it was able to be, you know,
Yeah.
put into that book. I mean, uh,
Yeah. Yeah.
it's
No, I
just
know. And yeah, I was thinking about that too, because she had shared with me before I'd read the book, the about the journal and
Mhm.
their, um, sort of as a way, like the way that she had described it was, um, you know, that they would kind of, you know, each day it's like you're reflecting on each day and you're saying, um, you know, was it a good day or was it a bad day? What were the
Mhm.
things that made it a better day, and what were the
Mhm.
things that made it hard? And because human beings, Homo sapiens, are pattern-seeking
Mhm.
animals, um, that you start to try to look for the patterns, you
Yeah.
know, and then in those patterns become not necessarily. I don't think they're trying to say like we have the answers for everybody, but become you're able to offer like, okay, I'm starting to see something here that seems to work
Mhm.
for me or for my partner. And you know, there's not a one size all fits solution for
Yeah.
this, but maybe that's helpful because of their whoever, you know, the personality type of the person that is going through um you know, loss or grief. And it's like that's something that would be helpful for them,
Yeah.
you know. So it's just that, yes, to have the state of mind to be able to do that is just is again
Huge.
going back to our state of awe of
Yeah.
recognizing the
We are in awe of them.
yeah.
I also appreciate that pointing out that something that I definitely will take away is just how individualized grief is. And I thought it was so helpful what Betty said about when you show up for somebody in their grief to give them those options,
Mm,
right?
mhm, mhm.
And that the unhelpful things that people say, but then also just to give people options, to give them choice, and to tell them that they can change their mind and that you can take it. You
Yeah.
don't have to do the emotional labor for me. Let
Yep.
me just
Yep.
be in presence with you. Um, I thought that was that was really huge.
Yeah, because sometimes
Helpful.
you just want to be alone, and sometimes you want to be with other people.
Mhm.
And to and I loved what she said about, you're dipping in and out, right? And we might
Yes.
just kind of move in and out. That there
Yeah.
might be times where we're talking about this thing that is hard and painful,
Yeah.
and then there are moments where you can have levity, and that is a way of that was something that her and I have talked about before. It's just, and this was more in context of our romantic relationships, right?
Yeah.
That a way to break tension,
Mhm.
a way to move through difficult conversations is to try to bring some levity and some
Mhm.
humor into the
Yeah.
that space, because it just like it kind of diffuses,
Yeah.
it just takes the charge out of things,
Mhm.
charge out of it in a kind of way. And that's one of the things that I always really have appreciated about my interactions with her and the both of them, is just like, you can move in and out.
Yeah.
You can move into
Yeah.
this like really soulful hard stuff, and then a couple minutes
2 minutes later, be
later,
laughing.
yes, and it's and that is when I talked about like that their gift is their ability to invite in
Mhm.
um to connection, to people, to this kind of conversation, which most people are, find radioactive, was the term
Mhm.
that's used, which is a really powerful word to use. But it's, that like it is like they're diffusing
Yeah.
the radioactive
Yeah.
material.
100%. And yeah, I thought that was a really powerful word too, because it's saying like somehow we are putting off something that is going to keep people away, right?
Yeah, yeah,
And so it, unfortunately, in that position, it does require the person who is in grief to have to make people feel better.
I know, I
And
know.
and 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 I think that probably some people in that space, you know,
Can't do it or don't want to
can't
do
do it or
it.
feel really resentful of doing it. And um you know, and we all know people who have kind of sat in their grief,
Yeah,
first, and it became who they were.
yeah, and that's all. Yeah,
and
yeah,
and I
takes over everything.
it takes over everything. And that idea of like, this is how I stay connected is through the grief, as opposed to how I stay connected to this person is through the generative things that we're going to intentionally create,
Yeah,
which they so clearly have done.
yeah,
Um, Also, that idea of what is it like to just, she says this beautiful thing about earning, was it, Justin? Earning the right,
oh, the authority
the authority
to
to sit with people in their grief. I loved, I, I loved the earned.
yeah,
I loved the ownership, her owning that sense of
yeah,
authority.
yeah,
It just, that felt like, that loss of control and
yeah,
security,
yeah,
and that,
yeah,
or that power and security, that felt like 100%
yeah.
owning that and being empowered by it.
And I think, and she reiterated, she did it, she said, talked about it
Mhm.
again at the end, and she used the same kind of language, and there's like a fierceness in her eyes as she
Yes.
says it, and um and that's what I think, that's maybe what I was trying to capture when I'm saying like she's revealing something that is right in front of you that you can't
Yeah.
see, and it is taking something that it's just like, it's like flipping it
Mhm.
in a way that, and she does it with language in the way that she articulates it, but it's like,
There's no, well,
yeah,
because there, and that's the thing, right? That's the difference. Somebody who's
yeah,
sitting in their grief and the grief becomes their identity, is there's like a victimness in that.
yeah,
There's like there's the fierceness
yeah.
is, and not that there isn't feelings of
Oh yeah,
woe
no, yeah,
me. I mean, of course, but like there is just an empowerment
yeah.
in the way, and an empowering care.
And they talked about that with their relationship, like a
Yes.
fierceness of, that's not, we're not going to let that happen
Yep.
to us,
Yep.
and we're going to, try to face this challenge head on.
Mhm.
I actually had a couple of friends, family friends growing up that lost
Mm,
kids.
mm,
And they were and I like the kids were, so one of the kids was my friend, and
mhm,
then another one was my friend's sibling who I
mhm,
didn't know. It had happened before, we knew each other. But the parents were really good friends with my parents,
mhm.
and my mom kind of walked through those spaces with them, and she was saying that they all had a difficult time. They all stayed together.
Mhm.
The marriages stayed together, but their difficulty was in that they wanted to just process it separately.
Mm,
Like one person wanted to keep the room the same, and the other person,
didn't
I
want
don't
to.
I don't want that. And like one person wants to kind of like revive certain memories, and other people wants to keep it closed. And it's
Yeah.
like that um that's such a hard tension. And so
Yeah.
trying to be intentional and sort of almost document so that you can
Mhm.
really see it a little bit more clearly. I mean, kind of having a scientific approach to it
Yeah.
is like, okay, so what do you need? What do I need? How do we create space for that in this relationship so that we can both grieve in the way that we need to?
And
And
create
yeah,
things together.
yep, yep,
Yeah. Yeah. It's really it's incredibly powerful. Um I also the when she was talking about the flowers
mm-hmm,
and that I think about that often when people are struggling and the energy struggling, not struggling, but like when they're in deep grief,
mm-hmm,
um tragedy, and there's an energy right around that time,
yeah,
no matter what it is. And there's lots of things that this would apply to. But there's an energy where people show up, people bring meals, people do this, people do that. And then it all kind of fades. And
yeah,
then those people are kind of left with you know,
yeah,
by themselves.
yeah,
And so then how do we just keep showing up in a way that's helpful? And so that idea of buying kind of care packages and lotion and like what she was saying. And I had this image of there's a play called Wit, and it was made into a movie. It's on HBO if you want to look at
okay,
it. And it was written by this woman. It won the Pulitzer Prize. She's a kindergarten teacher. This brilliant woman. It's the only play she's ever written, and it won the Pulitzer Prize.
that's amazing.
Yeah, and
Wow.
it's about a woman who is a John Donne scholar. She's a professor of English poetry. And her specialty is John Donne, the death and love poetry. And she gets like massive cancer. I think that's the clinical term for it, massive cancer. Um, but she goes to a research hospital.
Mhm.
This is the story. And so it takes place in a research hospital, and the research hospital is so inhumane,
Yeah.
right? It's all research based. They all know she is going to die. And so it's this woman's kind of interactions, and it kind of reflects how she has dealt with students kind of in a inhuman way
Mm.
in some ways. So it's about how we connect with other human
Yeah. Yeah.
beings. And in this beautiful scene, it's very kind of language driven, dense play. And then in one of the very few moments in the play or the film that is silent is this nurse coming in, and she brings lotion. And by this time, the main character, she is not conscious.
Mhm.
And the nurse comes in, and she just puts lotion in her hands, and she just rubs her hands and cares for her and just sits with her in the
Mhm.
space. And I had that image when Betty was talking about just like bringing this care package, just like, what can I do to just tend to you
Mhm.
in the most basic, loving, caring
Yeah.
way,
Yeah.
you know? Um, so yeah. And then that's something that we can, well, maybe not, I don't know. Do you think that's something that we're all capable of?
Coming and being tender in that way?
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, I think probably a lot of people are.
Yeah. Probably to not everybody,
Yeah.
but certainly, um,
Well, I think no, I
to
guess,
someone. We all
yeah,
have someone that we
we
can
could
care
probably,
for.
but I guess then that goes back to what we were kind of the original uh topic, or that one of the original
Question.
questions was or that people are scared,
Yeah.
of interacting with
Suffering.
suffering. And so
Suffering people.
um maybe there are, I mean, it is that there are people that are more well equipped to do that, or
Yeah.
and there are some people who are afraid to do that. But I think it's probably important to our humanity to,
Cultivate that.
yeah, I
Yeah.
think so.
Like I had an aunt. I have an aunt. I have an aunt who is incredibly gifted at um, tending to the needs of the elderly.
Oh yeah.
Like
Yeah.
she is gifted in that. Like
Mhm.
that is not my gift.
Yeah.
She is very gifted in that, and she always has been her whole life.
Yeah.
So I wonder if even you know we have certain maybe ages or kind of different
Yeah,
kinds of
I think
people
that's
that we're
true.
drawn to
I
taking
think
care
that's
of.
Lauren would say that for sure. I mean, she likes taking care of people who are older.
Yeah.
She's like, number one, because they have more stories that are interesting,
Aw.
especially when they're, you get 90-year-olds that are really lucid and
Yeah.
they remember a lot and are good storytellers. She's like, those are my favorite patients
Mm,
to interact with, which, I mean, she tends to especially not like taking care of kids. Like, it's like the opposite,
yeah.
because she's like, most of the time there's not actually anything wrong with them, which obviously was not the case with
Yes.
Betty and Kyle's child. But then when when there is something wrong, it's horribly sad.
Yeah.
And so, like, the extremes are really pronounced. So you might have an interaction where it's like, this thing that I just dealt with was really, really horrible, and then you walk into the next room, and then it's like someone who doesn't really need to be there, and the people are kind of assholes to
Mhm.
you, and you just
Right.
want to shake them and be like, I just dealt with something that was really terrible.
Yeah.
And anyway, so she struggles with that on the
Yeah.
pediatric side. So she much more prefers working with the older patients, mostly because of their rich histories, but also because you're like, as you're coming towards the end of life,
Mm,
like, it's not that it's not sad when someone who's in their 90s dies, but it's also not
yeah.
Necessarily
Tragic.
unexpected.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so people tend to deal with it
Yeah.
in a different way.
Yeah. There's a
um
beauty at the end of life
there
there.
can be
There
and
can
then
be. Yeah.
there's also the people who, she'll have patients that come in that are 100 years old, and
Mhm.
then the families will be like, well, like, what are you gonna do to save grandma? And you're like,
Yeah.
it's like, what's wrong with her? She's like, she's
100.
100.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with her. She's just
She's
100.
old.
You know.
Yeah.
But yeah. But anyway, so I think that we probably do have, some of us have orientations towards,
Yeah.
which I don't know. I don't know that I would be gifted at dealing with either. Although the one thing that is kind of funny is that older people have trouble hearing her.
Oh.
And so, like, when we talk to her grandma on the phone, I actually have to be the one that talks because my voice is deep. So my grandma can hear me, but then she has a heart. She's like, Lauren, what are you saying? Put Erin on the phone,
I
So,
love that.
yeah,
I love that.
yeah. Which this particular theme and these conversations also have made me think a lot about a book that you recommended to
Yeah.
me, and that I have probably is the book that I have shared with the most people. Like, I just keep buying copies of it and
Yeah.
giving it to people. But it's called 4,000 Weeks: Time Management for Mortals by Oliver Berkman.
Yeah. So good.
And the title, so 4,000 weeks, so that's the average length of a human life.
That's 80 years.
Yes, that's
Yeah.
80 years.
And
And
if you were asked somebody, like, how many weeks do you think we live? People are like, 24,000,
yeah.
68,000. They have no
Yeah,
concept.
it's weird. And then you're like, 4,000. Wait,
Yeah.
that doesn't seem like that many, right?
Yeah.
And that's the gift. And it is that the one of the kind of sub chapters in Betty and Kyle's book is called Life is Short.
Yeah.
And I think that when you go through a tragedy, or you lose someone when they are young, or that it's not the 100-year-old. It
Mhm.
could be a lot before that, but like the you start to realize
Mhm.
that shortness of time. And one of the things that Berkman's book does is he is kind of are able to articulate and capture the finitude,
Mhm.
how short life is for people who have not necessarily maybe experienced that kind of loss in their life, that he's able to bring that forward in a way that's really, really powerful.
Yeah. Yeah.
Why did you recommend that book to me? Do you remember? I can't remember.
'Cause, I think I had listened to a podcast interview of
Mm,
him, and I was like, "This is brilliant,"
yeah.
and I don't know, we just share things that we think
Things.
are
Okay. I
brilliant.
can't. I was like, because then I tried to share it back to you at some
And I
point.
was like, "I know, I already told you about this."
I know. I
Which was
know.
good. You were caring for me.
Hmm.
That is kind of how we care for people.
Yeah.
We're
Yeah.
like, "This is a great idea that will enrich your life. Please, we want your life to be rich."
Yeah. Well, I've shared that book
Mhm.
with lots of friends and had lots of conversations about it. And one of my good friends like quit her job after she read it.
Seriously?
She was
Oh
like
my
she was like
god.
I kind of took an inventory of life, and
Yeah.
she was in a position where she could, like, it wasn't like, oh, if I quit my job that
Yeah.
I can't pay my mortgage, right? It wasn't,
Yeah.
there was some breathing room there, but she was like, I need to take some time for myself
To really
and
think
figure
about.
out what am I doing, and
Yeah.
where am I putting my energy. And I she's like, I have too much on my plate right now, and
Yeah.
I don't even know that I'm doing what I want to be doing. And
Yeah.
so she was like, I'm going to leave my job for a while. And
Wow.
then when she told me she was like, I'm leaving my job, I was like, what happened? What's going on? And she was like, well, you gave me that book.
Oh my
And I'm
gosh.
like, oh, okay.
You gave
But
me that
yeah,
book.
and now
What was I
next,
supposed to
yeah.
do? I need to absolutely, totally 100% change my life.
I know. I mean,
Wow.
I mean, I can see how it has that powerful of a force
Yeah.
for people.
I mean, Bill asks me now every once in a while, like, I think when he gets stressed, he'll be like, "How many weeks do we have left?" I'm like, 1,300.
Yeah. Yeah.
We have 1,300. Like, we are way past the halfway mark.
I know. I know.
I think it's 13. Maybe it's 15.
There's a chapter in the book that's
And
called,
this is which
this is
book?
in the 4,000 Weeks
Okay.
book, that's called Cosmic Insignificance
Mhm.
Therapy.
Mhm.
And so, the idea is, and one of the keys to living the good life is recognizing how small we are. And a lot of times we do this in nature. But he does this for like the human race. I
Mm.
feel like in this
Oh, yeah.
in this passage, and
Yeah,
this
this is
is it.
good.
So it says, in every generation, even back when life expectancy was much shorter than it is today, there were always at least a few people who lived to the age of 100. So that's 5,200 weeks. And when each of those people was born, there must have been a few other people alive at the time who already reached the age of 100. So it's possible to visualize a chain of centenarian lifespans
Mhm.
stretching all the way back through history with no spaces in between them, specific people who really lived, each of them who we could name if only the historical record were good enough. Okay, here's the arresting part. By this measure, the golden age of the Egyptian pharaohs, an era that strikes most of us as impossibly remote from our own, took place a
Mm.
scant 35 lifetimes ago. Jesus was born about 20 lifetimes ago. And the Renaissance happened
Nice,
seven. That's how
nice.
he pronounces it. Happened 7 lifetimes back. A
Wow.
paltry 5 centenarian lifetimes ago, Henry VIII sat on the English throne 5. From this perspective, human history hasn't unfolded glacially, but in the blink of an eye.
Yeah.
And it follows, of course, that your own life will have been a minuscule
Mm.
little flicker of near nothingness in the scheme of things, the
Mhm.
merest pinpoint with two incomprehensible vast tracts of time, the past and future of the cosmos as a whole, stretching far off into the distance of either side.
Mm.
That guy knows how to turn a phrase.
Yeah, he does. And, as you read that, I think of Ella's little 1-year life
Yeah.
and how powerful her little 1-year life was
Yeah.
to s- to to her parents, to her siblings, and to all the people that it has affected. And so life is so short, history is so short, and yet, the time that we have is so potent.
Yeah.
If we're if we're willing to be intentional, the way that Kyle and Betty have been intentional, and in the way that Berkman in that book kind of encourages us,
To attend.
to attend. Yeah, I think that's it.
I think so too.
Thanks
Okay.
for joining us.
Yeah.
Attend to your life.
Yeah. And keep looking for connection.
Erin and I want to thank our listeners. The support and feedback you all have given us on this journey means a lot to us. If you're looking for a way to help us out, please subscribe, rate, comment, and share with a friend. It really does help so much.
Atheist is produced by Justin Seiwell and Trend Media STL and can be found on Apple, Spotify, Google, or wherever you get your podcasts. Thank you for listening and keep looking for connection.